So the other day, somebody asked me what my thoughts were about AI in the use of reef keeping. And we've seen this pop up in several of the groups and even my own group here recently, where people are using things like ChatGPT to help them guide their decisions for their tank and even identify stuff. I really didn't have a whole lot of thoughts about it. It's not something that I've spent a lot of time, thinking about or whatever. So I decided to talk to two people who I would consider industry experts in the use of AI and also in AI in reef keeping. And this is that conversation. All right, Tia, thank you for joining me so much and helping me out with this video. For those of you who don't know, this is Tia Davis, and at some point in her career, she actually worked in the field of AI and doing some stuff with that. So, Tia, if you want to give us a short introduction to who you are and what your kind of credentials are around that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I am a marine biologist. I have my master's in nutritional embryology, and a lot of my AI focus was actually during Amazon MTurk. I worked with Cerulean AI for a little bit, as well as a couple of different image recognition with calling our corals, and audio recognition as well with calling our corals. So basically, I've worked with a couple of different programs. I was a freelancer through Appen, and basically, it is a huge conglomerate of a bunch of freelancers that work with Google and Amazon and a lot of high name tech brands. And if you have a specialized skill set or if you're willing to pick up and work long hours, basically they reach out to you and say, hey, this is the job, you pick it up. I helped write some of the code for Google Gemini as far as academic integrity. So basically how it would prioritize some of the tokens in picking basically how it would organize information as important versus not important. So I really love tokens. I love language learning models like ChatGPT, a lot of people are familiar with, as well as image recognition, especially in regard to like Unicode and pixelation.
Cool. So safe to say that you have significantly more experience than the average hobbyist in
There
the
you go.
realm of AI and whatnot, so
Yes.
that's very awesome. So here's the thing, right? We all have access to this technology now. It's here, it's prevalent, it's probably not going away anytime soon without some sort of sweeping regulations, and that's not what this video is about.
Oh yeah.
But in the use of AI, as far as reef keeping is concerned, what has been your experience with using it to try to identify things, try to figure out what a hitchhiker might be, or something like that? Have you seen that that's been had a good result with AI, or is that a little bit concerning in your opinion?
I think it's a little bit of a loaded question because AI is only as good as the data that's available to it. And sometimes, especially when we're talking about little invertebrates, we're still getting a lot of genomic sequencing and phylogeny restructuring. So the AI right now has the entirety of the information at its disposal, that it has its own sorting system, as well as actual information from academics that's behind a paywall, not really accessible on the internet, actively being studied. So, for example, as in regard to pests, flatworms, a lot of pictures of flatworms, depending on if you ask Claude, ChatGPT, Grok on Twitter, you can ask the exact same question with the exact same image and get several varying answers of this is harmless, or this is actually an animal that crawls under a log, or an actual kind of identification as for example, that it would eat softies. The most correct answer I actually got was from Claude when I did that exact example. And you would not expect that considering that ChatGPT is like the one that everybody knows and is familiar with and largely has the most data points. So it's only as good as the tools you give it. And a lot of these image recognitions, they're based off the entirety. It's not just the reef keeping hobby. And something that looks different lit at the proper depth in the ocean in the images may look totally different than something zoomed in on a dirty rock in your tank. So I
Right.
think that's something super important to kind of keep in the back of your mind whenever you're trying to identify something. And there's not a lot of people really that are focused on teeny, teeny, tiny pests, like amphipods or isopods or flatworms or nudibranchs. There's only a handful of people that even I know that I would feel comfortable saying, hey, I'm unfamiliar with this. I wasn't able to identify in a book, wasn't able to identify it with Google. What are you thinking? And I'll know for sure they have an answer. So kind of back and forth with that. It's only as good as the tools you give the AI.
Yeah, and that all makes sense to me with the limited use that I've had with it. I have personally tried to have it identify things just to see if it would do it. And I've shown it, a Duncan coral, and it tells me that it's some sort of, exotic flower and things like this, because
Yeah.
it does have access to all of the available sort of free knowledge on the internet, right?
Mhm.
It's not it any of the AI programs, which we're going to talk about some of the apps that are available, in a little while. I'm also going to be speaking with one of the creators of the Reefability app, which
Yes.
uses AI within the app to help reef keepers find more success in their aquariums and stuff. But that is being engineered by them for the use in the hobby.
Mhm.
Whereas all of the other AIs are just all of the information in the world that they have access to. And misidentifications can be a very big deal with us. If we misidentify something in our tank, that either it be good or not good or whatever, it could potentially lead to a situation where other animals are, unalived, or something gets eaten that it shouldn't,
Yeah.
that you don't want or whatever. I remember we were talking about this the other day, and you sent me the one of the stick, and
That's an
I'll
Eastern
put it
timber
up on the screen.
rattlesnake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll put it up on the screen now, and it incorrectly identified a stick as a rattlesnake, because of the coloration of the stick. So as far as identifying things go, maybe we need to hold off on that for a little
Yeah.
while, and take it just at face value. Don't go in with a full trust on that. Maybe, I don't know. So moving on from that, I would like to know your opinion. I've got my notes here. Do you think that the use of AI might in some way discourage beginning reef keepers from pursuing the hobby? Because, as we all know, this is a complicated hobby. It's complex. There's a lot of things going on. We're literally building tiny ecosystems in our, tanks. And when this, sometimes you look something up on Chat GPT or Grok or whatever, and you end up with like a thesis. The thing just types
Yes.
forever and ever and ever and ever. Do you think that maybe that might end up being detrimental in some way to the beginning hobbyist just looking for a simple, easy answer?
I think it will more lead people down for a path. So the best example I can think of is I used to work at a fish store as well. I was the marine biologist on staff. And people would come in and they have an idea in their head. For example, I had one guy who was convinced if he just bought enough pH booster that he would grow coralline. And I was like, look, this is works, this is all the different things. He said, well, yeah, you said if I have a stable pH, that'll help me grow coralline. I'm like, that was a tiny piece of what I said. And I'm a
Right.
human trying to deter them off the path. The AI wants to give you the answer that you want. So what I'm more thinking,
That,
I think of ChatGPT psychosis, where they're just going to keep affirming you. So I'm more thinking that maybe a newbie will have an idea of how they want to set up the tank, and they may want acros and SPS, and they want right out the gate to have an Andrew Sandler style tank. And they just want to reach that goal and reach that goal. And the AI is going to tell them, hey, you got to have, high calcium, you got to have all these different parameters. And they haven't even got a cycle yet. And so
right.
I'm more worried about having an advisor who wants to please you instead of reaching out to a human as an advisor who wants you to succeed. And so I think that is more of a concern for me than getting a thesis and being overwhelmed. I think it's almost the exact opposite. It's not that you're overwhelmed, you're hearing everything you want to hear. And so the AI doesn't have discretion on that. It very rarely corrects itself without actually having some sort of input. That's why it always has at the bottom, check for facts, make sure that you aren't doing anything super
Right.
important here. And I mean, it can be a good thing and a bad thing. I use AI, even though I'm a certified AI hater, but I use it to conglomerate information. So, like, for example, if you're just getting into the hobby, you've got your Apex results, or you've got an ICP test, and you're like, look, I'm not trying to get a PhD in saltwater chemistry. I just need to know if I need to dose anything. Great time for AI. Starting a tank and using it as your sole advisor, not a great way to use AI.
Somebody actually did that in one of the groups. I was reading about that the other day. It was an experiment, which, if
Yeah.
you're going to do that kind of a thing, that's what I would hope that you would do, is treat it
Mhm.
like an experiment. Let's see what this can do. But also with the human intervention, if things start going wrong, you start getting close to unaliving animals, you need to, quit that and figure out a better way. But they had used AI to get them through all the setup, and every decision was made by ChatGPT. And ultimately they were successful, but they were a very experienced reef keeper already. So it
Yeah.
makes me question the validity of that experiment. Did they subconsciously impart their own knowledge
Hmm.
into the AI as they were asking the prompts and whatnot? Because as you said, it sometimes is almost like a confirmation bias.
Yes.
There was somebody in my group, and I meant to have it pulled up, but I didn't. But I'll put it on screen now. The other day, they were asking AI to do some things with their aquarium, and they were testing on certain days and whatnot. And it gave them the results of the testing from the sixth day, but they had not been to the sixth day yet. They were
Yep.
on day five, and I had to blur out a word, but they were like, "How in the world did you know what the results are on the sixth day? We're not even on the sixth day yet."
Yep.
So it's responsive to the input that you give it in wanting to give you what you want. Would you
Yes.
agree to that?
Definitely. And I think too, a lot of it as well, I just gave the example of the ICP analysis. In starting a reef tank, there's going to be vastly more information about there on the internet, in books. It's been something that's been going on since the 1800s. We have lots of information on how to start a tank. ICP analysis in use in the reef hobby, a lot of people struggle because there's just not a lot of information out there. I'm on the forefront of studying how algae interacts with trace elements, and I'm having a hard time communicating with academics to confirm things with trace elements and ICP analysis.
Really?
So for me to say, oh yeah, just type it into AI, it's going to give you all of that information, that's on the forefront. It's going to give you what it has, and it has no way to really audit what the initial advice was. So that, grain of salt with it as well. A lot of the things that we're doing in the hobby is still actively being studied in the ocean. So you kind of have to wonder about the literature and the validity of the information that even it has at its disposal, much less you. So
Well, that's
yeah,
true.
that's
That's not something that just jogged the brain for a second. I hadn't even considered that. It's the information that the AI is pulling from, and I'm using AI as just a general term for
yeah,
all of them. Let's just say that it references a blog post that someone wrote, but in that blog post, they made a typo, and it finds that information, but presents that to you as truth.
yep,
It has no way to know if it's truthful or not. It was like, oh, well, I found this information on the dangerous levels of nitrites in a marine aquarium,
yep,
and here's the number that you want to avoid, and it's 0.02, or
yeah.
something like that, because there was wrong information available to it. So that was kind of crazy. My brain just went down that road. So, all right, let's
Or like,
go.
for example, sorry, if there was an
No, go
example
ahead.
of you said, "Hey, what is the use of peanut butter in a saltwater aquarium?" You have something super niche that there's not a lot of topics on the internet to do, and there's only one article from Salem Clems from April Fool's Day. That's the only reference it has. So that's another thing. So the way that you would do that in an AI to actually get rid of that is you would have an exclusionary data set. And so I think that's what Reefability has done. I haven't messed with that app, but I've heard great things. I got to play with it on somebody's phone. But basically, what you can try to do is make it only pull from an exclusive data set, saying, hey, this is our data pool. It's from marine biologists, it's from veterinarians that are focused in aquatics, it's from peer reviewed sources, these scientific papers I've uploaded in. But, grain of salt with it, if you used a chat GPT skeleton, like say nobody's like home brewing AI anymore. You take like a little, deep seek, something that you've gotten to make a framework, and then you start trimming down the fat of what you want. The issue is the AI is so programmed to follow the same logic. Sometimes itself can override that. So a lot of these AI and tech studies that have come out there study data exclusionability of AI, and a lot of them are saying, look, you can try, but if I
Mm,
push this thing hard enough, it'll break it. And just
wow.
because it wants to follow that logic so hard, it'll actually
Hmm.
hurt itself. Like, for example, if you want to really have some fun with AI, ask it to find a seahorse emoji. I have an article on how that logic works, but pretty much across every single AI, it makes it break because it doesn't exist and it doesn't understand Unicode. So it's like, oh, here it is, and it's like a unicorn with a wave. And it's like, no, that's wrong, and then it gives you a bunch of options, and then it's just like, hang on, let me keep looking. I'm gonna stop.
Oh, wow.
But
Wow.
I mean, that's a great example of the exclusionary and the logic making itself fail while being also a good thing for what you need when you need it.
Interesting. I have to tell you this, and I probably shouldn't, but the whole peanut butter article, they got me with that one. I did not realize what the date was. And I'm reading this, and the article is like laid out. It's nice. There's the supporting documentation. I'm reading it. I'm like, there's no way this is real, you know? And but I'm reading it, and it looks legit and it looks amazing. And then the next day somebody was like, you realize what yesterday was, right? I'm like, no. They're like April Fool's Day. And I'm like, oh God.
That's a good point with AI. It presents it incredibly factual. It will present it
Mm,
exactly the way that you were just describing that it got you. It's just
hmm.
imagine that you were asking a question to an AI and you saw that instead of it being an obvious joke article that you found out later on. So
Right.
that's,
And
yeah,
I
the leg
guess
out. Super convincing.
the article was from wasn't it Reef Builders where
Yeah,
they
it was
did that?
Salem. Yeah,
Yeah,
Salem Clem's on Reef
that.
Builders.
Well, I don't know Salem personally. I've only spoke with him a couple of times. Seems like
He's
a
fun.
cool dude, very knowledgeable
Yeah.
guy. But I get the feeling that that would be something that he would do. But that's what happened to me. Like, and knowing everything that I know about the reef keeping hobby, which I have never proclaimed to be an expert. I'm just a guy that's made a lot of mistakes, and I try to help people prevent making those same ones. But we use all kinds of stuff in the reef keeping hobby for this problem or that problem or whatever, fluconazole and ciprofloxacin and all these other things. You know, Vibrant is like swimming pool algicide. And so it didn't even throw a flag in my, rearview
Yeah.
mirror, my radar and anything when he's talking about peanut butter. I'm like, sure, why not? You know? So
We're
anyway,
doing
that's just
vodka, might as well.
yeah, that was just a funny little anecdotal thing that I wanted to touch on because you mentioned that. But that's the point though, is it's presented so well by the AI that it's believable in almost every case, even if it's not factual information.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, let's move on to another one. So let's see. I've got a whole bunch, but I know I'm not going to try to
Oh,
keep you
dude,
here
I've
forever.
got all night. Go crazy.
Oh man, I unfortunately do not. But let's talk about this one for a minute. Do you worry? And this one, it's a little bit like the second question there. Do you worry that reef keepers might start trusting AI more than the established sources, the actual industry experts that have written books on this stuff? Do you think the ease and the speed of getting those answers could end up being detrimental to people's aquariums in the long run?
I think a lot of people have the confirmation bias over the. I'm not so worried that they will disregard the experts. That will kind of atrophy in their brain as a resource. It's kind of like I met somebody whenever I was talking about, oh, you should buy this book. He's like, I've
Mm,
never bought a reef keeping book in my life. What are you talking about? I can just Google everything. Now it's that to the nth degree more, you know.
right.
But I really feel like there's another aspect of that confirmation that it's always going to try to agree with you, always try to follow your train of logic. That if you're really, you've got your ego wrapped up and your tank is doing really good, and you have an industry expert tell you something a little bit different,
Mm,
that it's more going to be that you've always heard yes, that you're not even going to register that different information. And that's kind of why I worry about overuse of AI overall. For example, there was some study that came out that said something like 60% of the children under the eighth grade age range are using
mm.
it to construct papers anymore. And so whenever they made them handwrite out a paper, they went down to like a third grade level in writing because that sort of critical thinking muscle had atrophied. They couldn't come up with those thoughts. They only wrote in one lens. That study was super cool. I'll have to link it to you,
Yeah,
but
if you
it
could
just
send
kind
me
of,
that, that'd be great. I'd like to read it.
yeah. Or there was another one that was talking about they rolled out an AI model for surgeons. And it was basically like, hey, this is going to take notes while you're doing surgery. It's going to give you suggestions. It's going to be such a great model. You don't have to have nurses transcribe. You don't have to put in notes. And as the surgeons went through and was looking at like procedure suggestions, it was making up organs. It was making up procedures that weren't backed, and it was citing studies that weren't even related. So I'm more worried about those like hallucinations in the logic, not even the hallucinations themselves, like making up organs, but in the thought processes. That's what I'm more worried about because it's going to blend several things. Like there's a million different ways to treat allergy. You can dose vodka, you can do a manual removal, a tail to tank reset. You can dose fluconazole. And so what I worry about is the AI trying to summarize and make a short thesis based off of a short prompt, and it's going to hybridize all those methods. And then you're going to
Hmm.
try something that's just totally wackadoo out of the box because it just wanted to give you an answer you liked.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if they would write off experts. I just don't even know if that would start to cross your mind after a while.
Yeah. Yeah. It's once upon a time I had Julian Sprung's book.
Oh, I love it.
And it got lost in some stuff that we're not going to talk about. But I need to get it again because that was an amazing book. It got me started into reef keeping, 25 years or so ago, whatever it was. It was an
Yeah.
old beat up copy that had been around somebody's tank. Half the pages were, messed up from the water that had gotten on them and all of that, but it was a great thing. So we've talked a little bit about the problems that AI could present to us in the hobby with bad information or combining, treatment methods into, some hybridization of something that's just not a thing you want to do. But so let's flip it around a little bit. And
Mhm.
what do you see AI being as a good tool for reef keepers? How would you use it if you were going to use it to help you with your aquarium?
Definitely. So I actually do use it, even though I'm a certified AI hater. I use it a lot for conglomeration. What the AI is a predictability model. If you want it to predict trends, if you want it to try to spot problems based off known and established trends, if you want it to keep up with your parameters and log it, assuming that you're not, like that guy was talking about, it's going to make the sixth a day,
Hmm.
don't let it predict data entries, let it log data entries. If you want to, for example, if you've got a bunch of reef books, what I had done a couple of times is take a picture of it and tell it to make a transcription. So that way I'm not sitting there typing out the exact same thing. I could just insert it into notes of something that I was already making for somebody else to make a guide for. And so I didn't have to type exactly that paragraph in the book. If you wanted to, for example, I know on the Reefability app, one of my friends that let me play with it and mess around with it, they said it's worth it because I could take a screenshot of my Apex readings and it'll log it in the app. That alone to me, where I have all the third party, this is Refi, this one is Apex, this one is Hydros, having it all conglomerated into one space so I don't have to spend a bunch of money to make everything match in the ecosystem is worth it in and of itself. So that's a great way to use it.
Yeah, I
Um,
actually haven't gotten. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
oh, you're fine. I
Okay.
don't even know what I was gonna say.
I haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to mess with the Reefability app yet, but
Mhm.
I know a pretty good friend of mine is using it, and he absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
And he has seen since using it, he logs all of his ICP tests. He does them once a month, puts it into the app. The app makes suggestions, and he's still backing it up with knowledge that he has
Oh
of
yeah.
reef keeping to make sure that the suggestions are good and all that. But he's doing what it says, and he's seeing good, positive results with his aquarium. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of validity in that sort of mathematical use of it, looking at all the parameters and deciding, like you said, the predictability model, like your calcium's been trending down, you're going to want to offset your calcium dose by X amount, things like that. That is very exciting to me, but it also comes with the aspect of it is, how do I want to say this? Is that potentially harmful to companies like Reef Moonshiners and Triton and Captivate, who are basically doing this from their human knowledge,
Mhm.
and looking at people's ICP results? Hopefully, it doesn't result in a situation where it's harmful to their businesses. That would be the last thing that I would want to see. But I do think that that probably would be beneficial to some people having that ability in that app, you know, especially if it's a person who doesn't have a mentor or they don't have a group to talk to. A lot of people don't have Facebook,
Yeah.
and so digging through, Julian Sprung's book on reef chemistry and then comparing all the notes and figuring out what you want to do, or looking up the Hamza conversion tables and all that, some people, there's a lot of room for error there, I think is what I'm trying to say. And I think maybe the app might help prevent some of that error. So,
I
um,
think too, on the flip side, for me, I never realized that that was the fun of the hobby for me. Like once I started doing it, I was like, this is why I love the hobby so much. I love doing the conversions. I like seeing the chemistry. That to me was the most fun of getting started. So that's what I kind of worry about is people like, oh, they're going to rob me of the hard work, but it's also robbing you of the joy of the pride of like, I did that. I understand these cool things. And that's what makes you learn about the ocean. It makes you learn about how all these different things work. So whenever you do hear that, hey, ocean acidification, you're like, that's really bad. The pH of my tank is super important.
Yeah.
That
Uh-oh.
it robs you of the work, but it also robs you of the joy as well, in my mind. But
Yeah.
I hate
Well, there's a lot of
math.
people in the hobby who that is their favorite part of the hobby is managing the tank, you know. Some people's favorite part of the hobby is to come home from work and look at a beautiful aquarium,
Oh yeah,
let somebody else run it. They just want to see it. And that's perfectly fine and totally valid.
yeah.
But for a large portion of the people out, you know, in the hobby out there, they want to be there with their notebook, making the notes and the scribbles and the, you know, I adjusted my calcium by this much on this day and it did this to the tank and my my Bill
Well, I
Murray
don't do all
acro.
that,
I actually
but
know a couple people who do keep notes like that, you know,
ooh,
where they change something and they have every coral listed in their notebook with a running list of, you know, the calcium was here, coloration looked like this. Some people get really in depth with that stuff, but
this
that's
is
we're
why
getting
I
a
do
little
algae. Algae just needs to be happy.
yeah, yeah. We're getting a little off topic there with all of
A little
that,
bit.
but
It's okay.
so that would be your sort of prime space
Mhm.
for a positive use of AI in the reef keeping hobby would be the analytics and dialing down, you know, what your tank is doing on a chemical basis without having to physically do the math by hand and things like that, would you say?
Yeah. And
Cool.
for example, finding the best pricing, finding the best. For example, I was really, really looking for the cheapest price of this supplement. And like I was tired of flipping through all the different websites. I wasn't going to go on Amazon, look at every seller. So I just typed into ChatGPT, hey, who has the cheapest price on this? Um, that was awesome. Or I even had ChatGPT say, hey, can you list all the reef shows within like 250 miles of me? And it
Oh,
listed
that's
out
a
the
good
dates.
one.
Yeah. So like using it for finding data and conglomerating it, that's the sole purpose. Definitely a good thing. I would say make AI your left hand. Definitely don't make it your right hand. And for sure, don't make it your brain.
Right.
Use it as a tool.
Yep, that's what I was just about to say. Use it as a tool to help you succeed. You know, you can build a house with a manual hammer and some nails and a handsaw. You'll get there in the end eventually, you know, but if you have a skill saw and a, you know, power nailer or something like that, you're going to be able to do it a little faster, a little better, a little more efficiently. And I think I agree with you that that's probably the way that we should treat AI in reef keeping. I'm all for using it.
Yeah,
But I think there needs to be a responsibility around using it and a really, I think we need to have a larger conversation, not me and you, but us as a reef keeping hobby
mm-hmm.
with some more experts on this, which I would consider that you are, around what, you know, should there be some safeguards of some kind or what should reef keeping AI look like in the future? You know, do we want it giving people suggestions on alkalinity doses and things like that based on very limited input information? You know, if they say, oh, I have a 75-gallon aquarium, I just put XYZ corals in it, my alkalinity is 7.8, what should I dose? And then it comes back with this list of products this big,
Yeah,
you know, and it's basically it's just pulled up all the things that you can use for alkalinity. So they
yeah,
go and they buy 12 things and they come home and they're adding each one according to the directions, you know. I think there's a slippery slope there with too much information is a bad thing.
agreed.
But so hopefully we see a situation in the future where it's used responsibly, you know, and people keep that in the back of their mind that it is just a tool. And let's use it like a tool rather than using it as our brain. I think
Yeah.
that was a good way to put it. Well, I had a bunch more questions that I wanted to ask, but we've gone now for almost 30 minutes or so, so I don't want to keep you all evening. I do have another meeting to make. I want to thank you so much. This we put this together very last minute, and you agreed to this, and I really appreciate it. So, is there any place where you would like for people to come and see your work that you're doing, or anything that you know, any books you've written, or anything where you would like to get some more light shined on it for yourself?
Add me on Facebook. I do have a book that I'm writing. It's mainly on macroalgae and a lot of the bio processes in a captive system like a fish tank. And I also have, this is like super side note. I have a homestead that is aquaponic with saltwater. So I eat a lot of seaweed. I grow a lot of seaweed. I make makeup out of it. I do sourdough with seaweed additive instead of using like salt and butter. I extract pigments and I also go to a lot of shows. My next show is going to be up in South Carolina. It's put on by the Reef Farm, and I'm going to have a miniature saltwater hydroponic setup. And so I'm growing lettuce with it, which a lot of people don't know that you can, it's a whole thing.
I had
So
no idea you could
biochemistry,
do saltwater aquaponics.
yeah, I think I'm the only one. So it's
Hey,
definitely new.
pioneer, you
Yeah,
know, I
definitely.
mean,
It's fun.
that's a great thing, you know. I mean, maybe that transitions into something where, regions where saltwater is very prevalent,
Yeah.
it can be sustainable farming and things like that. That's amazing. Cool.
And I'm landlocked in Tennessee, so it's totally attainable,
There's no saltwater anywhere near you
no
except for
salt.
what
It
you put
actually
there.
helps. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really great in aquaponics. So it's totally closed system, closed loop. I'm growing all kinds of vegetables and button quails, and my 6 foot green tree iguana eats seaweed, and her poop powers the. It's a whole thing. So follow me
You
on
have
Facebook.
like a whole paludarium
Yeah,
situation going on there. I love it.
except
That
for
is
we live in
amazing.
it. It's it's
Yeah.
interesting.
You are in the paludarium.
Yeah, I'm the main exhibit there, I guess. But yeah,
Wow.
follow me
Wow.
on Facebook.
Yeah.
Send over your questions you got. I'll type them out and we can go from there.
Okay, sure. Yeah, well, I'll do that. Maybe it becomes a blog article or something. So
That'll be fun. Yeah,
very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna hop over now and switch channels and talk to the guy from Reefability and see what he has to say.
definitely. Let me
All right.
know.
Bye.
Good to talk to you.
You too. So that was Tia's opinion, and I think it's a very valid one since she worked in the field of AI and has a lot of knowledge about how these things work. Next up, we're going to talk to Andrew, who is one of the team members that put together the Reefability app, which uses AI to help reef keepers guide their decisions. But
That's all
okay,
right.
so
That's all right.
I'm Logan, and I created Reef Rookies, basically just to provide a space for mostly beginning reef keepers to have a place to go to get the information they need to be successful at the start of reef keeping and all of that without being jumped on. By all the people telling them that they need to do their research and go to Google, and Google is your friend, and all of that. So that's kind of how it got started. I was helping out another guy in another group. He was getting bashed on, just because he had a simple beginner question. So I told him to, message me. We would talk through it. And we did. It was a couple of days that we had to talk back and forth, and we figured out what the problem was. And he is now my number one, my lead moderator for my group. He and I have been friends now for about 3 years or so. And he recently just fought dinos for like 8 or 9 months in his tank.
I
He's
can, I'd
finally
love
getting
to,
to the end.
I'd love to talk about dinos because that is something that is a real problem for new reefers in the hobby right now. And I have some thoughts on that. And just to add on to what you said, I'm Andy, by the way. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Um,
you.
the it's not just people being rude, right? It's all of the contradictory information. I mean, a lot of times a
Mm,
problem for new reefers is that people are just overly friendly and they share their views or they share their experience and they don't have a lot of knowledge themselves, right? So,
mm.
uh, newer reefers with a lot of questions can get led astray. And
Yeah,
the dino thing is a great example, right?
right, right. Aggravating little bugs those guys are, but yeah, I think that, that particular topic, and maybe you and I can have another chat at some point and we can talk about just this and more in depth. But there is so much more information out there these days than there was 20 years ago. We were basically limited to a handful of books and the fish store and the guys that you knew or the people that you knew in the doing the hobby or whatever. But now, if you jump on, you make a post, you're going to get 20 different people with 20 different answers for what you need to do to fix XYZ problem. And then you have to sift through, figure out which ones of those are the most common, are the most similar, and maybe that's the right way to go. But
Yeah.
there's 1,000 ways to be successful in reef keeping, and all of them may not be the number one way that somebody would say do it, but all of them aren't totally wrong either.
So I guess I would push back a little bit on 1,000 ways to do to be successful in reef keeping. I think that you're right. There's a lot of different ways to do it.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, a lot of them are wrong turns and lead to a lot of problems, right?
Yeah.
There are some ways. I think there are much fewer ways where you're more likely to be successful. And I've built that information to the app, which we're going to talk about in a minute,
Hmm.
to help newer reefers, to help reefers that have been around for a while be more likely to be successful. And when I say more likely, I mean, maybe 7 times out of 10, you're going to be successful this way. Now, there may be that one guy who, is who set up his tank with all dry rock and it worked out great for him. And he may be one of the one out of 50 people
Hmm.
that worked for, right? But it worked for him, so he wants to tell you about it, right? And so
Right.
you oftentimes can get led down paths that are not very likely to be successful. So
Mm.
what you're saying, I think, is correct, and there's different ways that can lead to success, but some of them are much less likely to be successful pathways, and especially if you don't have a lot of experience.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's one of the reasons, I've set up a whole bunch of tanks over the years with, clean dry rock, my 210 that I just revamped here in the last, 6, 8 months or whatever it was. I set that up with Marco rock and built my scape and everything. But I also just ordered some Tampa Bay rock and I got it in. It's going in the sump, it's going in the tank around all of the other rock to hopefully bring some of that in, to the new stuff. And I'm
And
gonna
so, why did you decide that it might be a good idea to add Tampa Bay rock?
just because of everything that it comes with, all of the bacteria and the coralline that's on it, and they even gave some macroalgae and stuff, but there's critters, there's copepods, all of this stuff
Yeah,
that comes along with that rock that the dry rock doesn't have.
that's right.
So,
I guess
and
what I'm leading you to is,
mhm,
did you have experiences in the past where you didn't do that, where you had some trouble?
ah um yeah, you could say that. Yeah, now there's only been one tank that I really had a massive issue with, and it was the same tank, the 210, and it was previous to what led up to this teardown that I did most recently. And I set that tank up with dry rock that came out of someone else's tank that had problems for a long time. They took it out. It dried out completely. I ran it through a muriatic acid bath and a bleach bath, tried to kill everything off. I did not dark cure it. I started the tank with it straight out of those baths. It was completely sterile. And whatever they had in their tank, I missed some somewhere. It came back and it came back with a vengeance. And I could not get rid of it. It was some sort of a green hair algae type stuff. But all of the normal things didn't touch it. It didn't do anything to it. And there was nothing I could do to get rid of it. When I add cleaners to the tank, they would eat it and they would all die. So I never did
How
get a
long
positive
how
ID on
long
what it
did
was.
did you try to do that until
I
you
fought it
finally
for
said,
almost 2 years
yeah,
until I
see,
was just like,
yeah,
I'm done. It was
yeah.
I tried a
So
couple
that's
of
what
different
I've heard,
tanks. Yeah.
I mentioned I've been involved in our reef club, and I've been
Hmm.
the president of our reef club for a couple of years. Now I'm on the board of directors, and I have heard that story over and over again.
Yeah.
I fought dinoflagellates and all this weird stuff for a year, 2 years, and the common denominator is usually that, oh, well, I started with all dry rock because I
Hmm.
was told that that way I could avoid pests.
Yeah,
And
that's always the number one reason why someone doesn't want to go with real live rock. Well, number two is that it's usually very expensive. But
right,
the number one reason is I don't want the pests. I don't want the
right.
hitchhikers. The Tampa
But
Bay rock that I just got, it has Aptasia on it, but
yep,
I'm going to take care of that. I
yep,
didn't get any cool hitchhikers, unfortunately, just a couple of limpets, but I was
yep.
hoping for like a mantis shrimp or a strawberry crab or something, but I didn't get one.
So you learned that the dry rock only approach is one of those very low probability success routes that you can take when
I
setting
did.
up a reef tank.
I did, yeah, and I kind of knew that. going into setting up this 210. It's been, I've done that with every tank that I've done, but I've also always added more diversity from other tanks and other sources and stuff like that. That one was the first time that I had ever done it with the clean, sterile, supposedly sterile rock and didn't add those other sources in.
Yeah.
And it oh, it was a fight for 2 years. I made a whole YouTube video about the entire process.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of videos like that.
mhm.
Do you remember the BRS 360? It was 9 months of looking at the different kinds of dinos that popped up in Ryan's tank because he started it off with dry rock. Now
Uh,
there's a guy,
I
Ryan
saw
from
part of that.
BRS.
Yeah.
There's a guy who had all of the tools he could possibly want, right? He
Hmm.
got a lot of advice from a lot of people, and he wasn't able to make it work in 9 months. And after 9 months, as I recall, he added a bunch of live sand, and then that helped things out quite a bit. So
That's the next thing that I
this
want to
is
get.
all a good segue, probably, to talk about how the app can help people. I don't know what your plan for our
Yeah,
discussion
we've
was,
kind of
but
been a little off topic thus far, but that's fine. Any information from experts in the hobby and people who've been doing this for a long time to the core group of people that I'm usually speaking to is good
yeah.
information. So yeah. Well, moving in, are you the sole creator, or is there a team that surrounds with Reefability, the
There's
app?
a few of us. I'm
Okay.
the chief science officer, so I have a
Okay.
PhD in ecology. I teach college biology. I've been a reef tank hobbyist for about 13 years, and I've been uh, a fish tank hobbyist for a lot longer than that. So,
Very
and then
cool.
we have a programmer and some other people. So,
Okay, so a whole team around the
yep,
the Reefability app. So
yep,
one of the first questions that I had about it, so I guess we'll just do, if you want to do a quick explanation of what the app is, for the people who may not know about
yeah.
it.
Yeah, so Reefability is an app that you run from your phone that you can get for either iPhone or Google Play for Android. And it's basically a holistic tank management set of tools. And so you can use it to analyze data. Um, you can use it to, there's a bunch of tools that you can use it for, say for managing your nutrient balance, for using it, you can use it to adjust trace element dosing. You can use it to log all of your equipment. You can use it to take notes, set up reminders of tasks, all sorts of different tools. And what ties it all together is an AI engine that uses a deep learning algorithm to learn the parameters of your tank, to learn your equipment, to learn the data that you upload. Um, and then you can ask it questions about how your tank is doing and about what you ought to do to keep your tank on track or to avoid um, problems with pests or to solve problems with pests that you've run into. And so it really uses, I think, AI like a lot of apps are going to use in the very near future.
Mhm.
Um, AI is such a powerful tool. And when you put limits on it and tell it what to work with, it can be a real game changer. And especially, I think, for managing a system that can be as complex as a reef tank.
Definitely can be complex. And what you just said reminds me of something that I wrote down. I was speaking with Tia Davis the other day, right? I'm gonna have y'all are a bit different in your viewpoints. She's not really a big AI supporter as far as it goes with the reefing hobby,
Well, I
having
think that
worked
I
in
think that
AI. But
Tia, I mean, I think that Tia and I probably agree on most things, and I think that Tia doesn't really understand, what we're doing with our app. And so I imagine if I talk to Tia, I
I,
could I
I
could
think
bring
she
her
might
I
do
could bring
the
her over to our side. Yeah,
She I think she already is though, because we were talking about it, the use of AI in the hobby as a whole, but the only positive thing she did have to say was the way that the app is going for you guys and how y'all are
yeah,
using it is the right way to do it, she thinks,
yeah,
but
yeah,
she was mentioning that, using something that she called exclusionary data sets
yeah.
to make sure that it is going to provide the correct
Right,
information and not
right.
just go down a, left turn
Yeah.
path of the wrong way.
Yeah, so let me respond to that. So, like I said, I think T and I probably agree on most things concerning AI and the hobby. I think that everyone should be skeptical of AI and AI tools. In general, AI has overpromised and underdelivered for a lot of the ways that it's been seen by people. It's been used in a lot of, to spin up all sorts of fake images and fake
Hmm.
articles and just generally a lot of stuff that's kind of polluted the information ecosystem, right? Um, ChatGPT is a very useful tool,
Hmm.
but ChatGPT, pulls from a lot of sources and like Tia said, it can pull from things that aren't true. And as an example, there was recently somebody who wrote an article about, I won't say who wrote an article about a particular topic and clearly used AI to write the article. And it actually pulled an April Fool's article from Reef Builders where
It
Salem
is.
Clement had suggested dosing peanut butter for the linoleic acid to the tank as a cure
Yeah.
for brown jelly. And so uh, you know, ChatGPT does that stuff, right? And so you have to
Yeah.
ChatGPT for someone like myself, who has deeper knowledge of a lot of things. I can find useful because I'm able to sift and winnow through the results, and I can see what's not good and what is, right? Whereas it's not something that a beginner can do, right? So
Right.
I don't think using ChatGPT or tools like that is a great idea for reef keepers because it gets stuff wrong. And
Right.
so the difference is that our AI tools have been trained to use the reliable information. They've been trained to exclude certain information, like Tia mentioned, that
Hmm.
isn't correct, right? And so we spent about 6 months training the AI to only use information that we'd vetted. Information about reef keeping. There's a lot of contradictory stuff on the web, right? Relative to other sources of information, other kinds information about other topics, there's not very much, and it's very contradictory. And so we had to, for example, things like microbiome. We had to really restrict what the AI used so that people could get good information. And so if you do that, and if you make the AI before it makes a recommendation, if it cross checks several sources, and if it cannot cross check those sources, then it tells you it doesn't have enough information, right? So another
Interesting.
problem
Yeah.
with AI, like ChatGPT and other sources of AI, is that if it can't find information that you asked it for, it'll make it up. That's called AI hallucination, and it's especially a problem if so I said that I teach college students, right? So they look for references about a certain topic, and
Hmm.
the AI will make up references, right? And then so they put fake references in their paper or whatever they've used AI to draft.
That's
And
crazy
yeah,
that it'll make up
so
the
our
fake references like that.
yeah, I mean, it makes stuff up. That's a real problem with AI because it wants to fulfill the request, and so it
Hmm.
it searches and searches, and it can't find information, and so it makes it up. And so we've put certain things in place to prevent the AI in our app from doing that.
That's great. That's awesome. I had no idea that y'all did that. Like I told you in the beginning, I haven't actually used the app yet, but I plan to do so. I just haven't gotten around to that point yet. It's funny. A minute ago, you mentioned the article with the peanut butter because that came up in my discussion with Tia as well.
Yeah.
Because, and
Did she
I'm
know
not a.
about that example?
Oh yeah, she did absolutely. She knew about it, and,
I
and
mean,
I
did she know about the article that cited it accidentally?
we didn't talk about that. She may know of it, but yeah, I wasn't aware that there was one that the article that cited
Yep.
that article.
Yep.
But Salem's article that came out in Reef Builders, I did not realize what day it was. And I'm reading through that, and it was written so well because, of course, it was written not for peanut butter. It was originally written for something else.
Right.
And it got me for a minute. I was like, there's you really, I actually had given it some thought for a
And
little
then you
while.
thought about it a little bit. Oh, wait a second. Peanut butter and brown jelly. That's a little bit
Yeah.
cute,
Yeah,
right?
it was a little bit too much, but yeah, I probably shouldn't even admit to that, but I'm just a guy, I make mistakes sometimes. So all of that is really interesting. I really like the part where you guys have trained this in knowledge that you know to be good, and that it references multiple different sources, and if it can't sort of confirm what its thinking is going to, its answer is going to be, then it just says it doesn't have enough
Yeah.
information.
I mean,
And
AI
so,
is a tool. It's a powerful tool. It's being used for all of the dumb stuff that I mentioned, but
mhm,
it's also being used to restore the Great Barrier Reef. At
yeah,
Reef Stock last year, or this year, I guess, Kevin Erickson gave a talk about how they're using AI analysis to identify areas that are most likely to be receptive for new coral plantings. So it's being used for important things like
yeah,
that. It's also being used, in cancer research. And so it's there's not a problem with the tool. It's
mhm,
a revolutionary tool. The problem is the way it's being used. And so
right.
it's like any tool, right? It can be used in a good way or it can be used in a bad way. So
I
we're
agree.
doing our very best, and it's obviously we learn as we go, but we're trying to use it in a good way.
Awesome. So, with that being said, is there some example that you can think of right off the top of your head where you've had some really excellent feedback from a user of the app who really turned a tank around with it or had a good experience, something
Yeah,
like
so
that?
I have a couple examples. So into the dinoflagellate stuff,
Hmm.
we had a user who'd been struggling with, I have to look at my notes here, been struggling with
Sure. Yeah.
dinoflagellates. But the app does a couple of things. So it pushes people to test their water once a week. And if you test your water once a week and input data once a week, then once there's enough data in the app, it will make predictions. It'll give you projected trends for your for different parameters. And when it comes to dinoflagellates that this reefer was struggling with, nutrients are extremely important for
Hmm.
dinoflagellate management. And one thing that the app does is it pushes users to test once a week and it tells them what their nutrient ratio is. So let me talk a little bit about nutrient ratios. So
Yeah. Sure.
um, in my view, the ratio of nitrate to phosphate, something I call the reefer ratio, that's a
Mm.
name that I made up for it.
Yeah.
The reefer ratio is a way to contrast with something called the Redfield ratio that people get
Right.
confused about. So the reefer ratio is 100 to 1
Hmm.
in ppm nitrate to phosphate. Okay, so
Okay.
that
Yep.
means 100 to 1, that would be 5 ppm nitrate and zero point zero 0.05 ppm phosphate. Okay, um, if you have your nitrate and phosphate in that ratio, you're less likely to have problems with nuisance microbes. And the actual values can range a little bit. So, you could have nitrate up to 15, 20, phosphate up to, 0.15, zero point 0.2. They can range a bit, but you need to keep them in that ratio. And, I don't mean exact. There's some variance from the exact ratio. But what the app does is it uses it kind of like a compass. Like this is your North Star. Okay, this is where you want to steer towards. Steer
Right.
towards that 100 to 1 ratio, and it'll tell you how to do that. And
That's
so
great. I love
and
that.
and so this is something that user found very helpful because this user had issues with nitrate getting low and phosphate getting high.
That's never
And
good.
this is a recipe for dinoflagellates when nitrate
Hmm.
starts to approach zero, and also for cyanobacteria when you have nitrates
Hmm.
get low and phosphate get high. And by using the app to kind of point towards that 100 to 1 ratio, this person was able to get past that dinoflagellate stage. And,
That's
as
awesome.
a kind of a larger just a larger perspective about issues that new reefers have.
Hmm.
And this kind of gets back to what you're saying about dry rock. Um, most tanks are started up with some proportion of dry rock, right?
Hmm.
just because live rock's expensive, it's not easy to get. There's a lot of pests that come with it, right? Dry rock, at least to provide structure to your tank, is an important tool when starting out a new tank. And what it also does, though, is it sucks your nitrate and phosphate out of the water.
Hmm.
And so newer reefers with newer tanks are likely to have problems with low nitrate and low phosphate.
Hmm.
And nitrate is the one that really tends to get pretty low for a long time. Phosphate will start out low, but it tends to creep up a little faster than nitrate in newer tanks.
Yeah,
And,
we've been having a little bit. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
There's been discussion on my group recently about the, dry rocks and sucking up nutrients, and we're seeing a ton of people who are
Yeah,
starting, especially with the Carib Sea life rock.
yeah,
This
yeah,
stuff
all
just sucks
those.
up nitrates and
Yeah,
phosphates for months before the tank can
right,
stabilize.
right. And so if that's happening to you and you're just kind of letting things, just kind of rolling with it, your nitrate goes to zero. Your
Hmm.
phosphate's probably higher than your nitrate, and you get just a ton of dinoflagellates. And this happens because dinoflagellates can feed off of dissolved organic carbon sources. They don't need to have nitrate to proliferate. And basically, without getting into lots of details,
Hmm.
there are bacteria that have to build up in biofilms as your tank gets older. And those bacteria don't do very well when the nitrate is zero. And so
Right.
you're just not going to have those bacteria that build up a biofilm and outcompete dinoflagellates. And so you're just going to end up with these big blooms of dinoflagellates, and you're going to pull your hair out. And so what the app suggests is if you're in this situation, an easy fix is to dose sodium nitrate.
Hmm.
It's very inexpensive. You can either buy it, already mixed in RO water as neo-nitro, which you can get, from Brightwell, or you can
Oh.
get some from Amazon and just dilute it in RO water and then dose it, and that'll bring your nitrate up. It's a much cleaner way to increase nitrate in a new tank than just feeding more. Because if you just feed more, you get a lot of, stuff that rots and
Hmm.
contributes to dissolved organic carbon and stuff in the water that can feed stuff like cyanobacteria.
Right. So, yeah, and all of that is awesome. So the app would actually could actually make a recommendation based on your tank size. I'm assuming this, and water volume and all that for how much of these different things you might want to use. If somebody's going to use sodium nitrate versus neonitro, does it calculate that if they put in which
So
one
we
they're going to
don't we
use?
don't actually have, so it'll tell you to consider dosing nitrate. We
Okay.
don't actually have that tool for you to do that calculation, but that's something we could easily add to the app.
Okay. I was just wondering off the top of my head,
Yeah.
if somebody had, a drop down box and they picked their product
Yep.
and they put in that other information, would it tell them how much to use to raise by X
Yep.
amount?
I mean,
Um,
generally what I do is I
mhm,
tell I tell people to just, for if they're newer reefers, I tell them to just get some neo-nitro because there's good
mhm.
instructions on the bottle.
Yeah, and it's proven,
Yep.
it's people have been using it for a long time. So,
But then if once you get a few months in, you want to save some money, then maybe try the cheaper stuff from Amazon.
mhm. Great. So all of that sounds good. Let's see what one of our other
So yeah,
questions
so
had
sorry,
here.
I was giving a story about how somebody had used the app
You were,
to
you were
get past the
indeed.
problem with dinoflagellate. So that's one example.
Hmm.
I have a couple other quotes I can read. Let's see, this person is talking about the trace element dosing. She says, one of the perks of Reefability for me is the fact that I can use the Captivate system and it summarizes the recommendations succinctly because I find the spreadsheet to be cumbersome. And so she's referring to the Captivate um, trace element dosing spreadsheet. So
Hmm.
just a little background on that. Captivate is a company, a reef chemistry company that's run by Chris Wood, who used to be the lead chemist for Brightwell.
Hmm.
And he has a company where he produces supplements, a lot of trace elements. And a nice thing is he has a system where you can mix all the trace elements into a single cocktail.
Hmm.
And you can base that on your ICP results and then dose it for a month on a doser. And it makes, a trace element dosing pretty easy to do. But his spreadsheet, as the Reefability user said, is a little cumbersome. in
Hmm.
that you have to, by hand, you have to transcribe the information from your ICP results. And
Right.
so we built a tool in the app where you can just upload a PDF of your ICP of any ICP provider, and it will convert in like 20 seconds. It'll give you the dosing information to make the cocktail. So it just makes it
That's awesome.
makes it easy. Yeah.
Yeah. What? Oh, hang on one second. I had a screen pop up here. There we go. It's gone. So that's great. I was looking into the Captivate method over the last couple of months. It's my tank isn't there yet. It doesn't need it yet. But once
Yeah,
it,
well, you should check it out. So check out the
yeah, for
app.
sure.
Makes it super easy.
That is really great to know, even if just for me. But I'm sure other people are going to find that very interesting too. We have a lot of
That's
people.
probably the most talked about and feature
Hmm.
of the app. I think a lot of people subscribe just for that.
Right.
And it's a really good deal. It's only 25 bucks for a year. And 25 bucks is like what you spend on a
I
ZOA
mean,
frag. And
right.
you can save
Yeah.
so much time uh, you know, from transcribing ICPs for 25 bucks. It's a good deal.
Right. That's great. And if we're talking about specifically the beginning reef keeper, a lot of people they have the funds and the ability to go out and buy all of this stuff and they buy the
Yeah,
corals and they get the things and they bring them home. But then the hours of digging through what does my
right,
ICP test
right.
mean and all of that, you're just taking that difficulty in the hobby and basically eliminating it.
Yeah,
There's always going to be that outlier thing where something goes haywire,
yep,
but those types of people who can do that, who have the funds and they can pack a tank pretty quickly and it starts using up the elements,
yep,
that's going to be good for them to be able to have that information so fast rather than, having to read through the books and read through the forums and spend hours and hours and hours trying to figure out what the right way to go is. So
yeah. And
that's
I
really
think
cool. I
I
like
think
that.
I mean a nice feature is that the app has what we call Reefer AI. So it's kind
Hmm.
of like Chat GPT. It's a chat bot, but it has been limited to those vetted sources of reefing information. It also learns all the parameters of your tank. It learns the equipment. It learns your husbandry practices, and you can ask it questions. And it'll give you answers from those vetted sources of information. And by pulling the data, that you've logged into the app. And so it's nice in that you can get immediate answers to questions. And as somebody who is very active in his reef club, I didn't design the app to replace reef clubs or replace asking questions on forums. But what
Hmm.
I find is that it can make you a lot more intelligent with your questions because it helps you do a lot of that sort of, synthesis of all your parameters um, before you go talk to an advanced reef keeper about some issue you're having. And so it kind of speeds up the process whereby you can ask intelligent questions of other reef keepers.
Yeah, because there was somebody suggested that I make a video on this, and I may very well do it. It's how you present your questions to people when you're looking for answers is very important. There's a huge difference between a post that has a parameter history and what's going on with the tank and what changed and maybe why is this happening versus one that's
Yeah,
just what is this green stuff in my tank?
right,
It is
right.
very different, and the way that people go about doing that is very important. The more information we have when we're reading, what's going on, what you changed, what you added, or what you stopped adding, or so on and so forth. It
Yeah.
makes a big difference.
And the nice thing is that the app knows all those parameters, right? So when you ask the app a question, it already knows all that stuff. And so
Hmm.
it does that work for you and then can give you some information about how what you're seeing might be influenced by this or that. For example, you say this green stuff. So one of the things the app has is you can take a picture of a pest and
Hmm.
upload it, and the app will give you a probable identification. Now, this is limited by the quality of the picture, right? Which can be difficult sometimes with blue lights
Sure.
and things,
Yeah.
and not having a filter for your phone or whatever that gets through that blue light. But if you can take a good picture, The app is pretty good at coming up with some diagnoses of the most common pests that you'll see, say, green cyanobacteria, if you see a lot of green stuff, right?
Hmm.
And then it can, and then you also enter some descriptions to go with the photo, and then it can give you a potential recipe to address the problem based
Cool.
on, what else is going on in your tank. So let's say your nitrates are at 0 and you've got this ugly brown stuff you take a picture of. Well, the Reefer AI or the identification tool is going to say, probably got some dinos, and this is probably why, because you haven't kept that reefer ratio, that 100 to 1 nitrate to phosphate ratio.
That's
Or
great. Yeah.
it can just be that, you're early on in the tank, right?
Hmm.
There's a time, even if you do everything right, have nutrients, there's still about a 3 month period or so that it takes to build up those biofilms.
Hmm.
And once you have the right bacteria that build up on biofilms, that is, bacteria all living together on the surfaces of sand and on rock, when you introduce dry sand and dry rock, there's an open ecological niche that is an open space for things to live.
Right.
And dinoflagellates are almost always present because they're very good at dispersing through the air. And they use light. And so that's a great place for them to thrive. Now, a mature reef tank has a lot of light. It has nutrients. But it has bacteria in those biofilms that outcompete the dinoflagellates. And to get from that dry surface to that mature biofilm takes some time.
Hmm.
And even if you start out with all of the stuff, all of the right stuff, it takes time.
Hmm.
But you can have a period where you go for a year and you never get the right stuff, right? And that's what you're talking about with the dry rock.
Hmm.
And so a couple of other notes is that it really helps to add some live sand from the ocean
Hmm.
because it will provide those bacterial species that will help build up that biofilm and would otherwise have a hard time making it into your system because they would have to come through the air. They have to get into your system somehow, right?
Hmm.
And so in a new tank, it really helps to add a little bit of live sand from the ocean or a little bit of reef rubble from the ocean, like you talked about. And so there's complexity there, right? There's nutrients. So you might have that 100 to 1 ratio of nutrients of nitrate to phosphate, but
Hmm.
you still end up with dinoflagellates.
Hmm.
There's multiple factors there. If it's a young tank, right? There still hasn't been enough time for the right bacteria that thrive in that 100 to 1 nutrient ratio environment. They haven't established themselves yet. So you still get dinoflagellates. So that complexity, the AI in the app can help explain that, make it simpler. And because it's confusing. Um, Most of the time when I talk to newer reefers, they're in that early stage, right?
Hmm.
Usually, they've just added a little bottle of bacteria
I was going to ask
to
you
some
about that.
sand and a rock, right?
Hmm.
And those bottles of bacteria contain, nitrifying bacteria,
Hmm.
which is good for converting ammonium to nitrate, but it doesn't do much for building up those biofilms to keep things like dinoflagellates at bay, right?
Right.
So it's only one tiny ingredient to the whole recipe of a healthy reef tank, what we would call a healthy
Yeah.
microbiome. And
And that's what
so,
I'm sorry, I keep trying
oh
to
no,
interrupt.
go ahead, go ahead. I'm
I was going to
talking too
say,
long.
no, that's why we're here. All of this information is amazing. It's just sometimes I have to get things out of my head or I'll forget them.
Oh yeah,
That
definitely. Go ahead.
that's why I'm trying to get it out there to the people who I'm helping and to think about their system as an ecosystem,
Right.
not just a tank with some stuff in it. You know, there's all this stuff that has to happen on the microbial level, all of the things that you were just talking about. And all of that has to happen at the right time and in sufficient volumes to fight off the things that we don't want, like dinoflagellates and cyanobacteria and all of these other things. So, and in some ways, there is a basis in being able to do that by routine testing every week, knowing the history of the tank and the trends for what the parameters are doing. And the app is just going to make that so much easier to keep track of.
That's
I
the
have,
intention, yeah, because
yeah.
it's complex and there's different variables, right? There's the time that it's been since you started the tank. There's the ingredients. Did you start out with live sand or live rock, or is it just all uh, dry rock and dry sand, right?
Hmm.
There's different factors, and so the complexity of that can be challenging.
It definitely can. I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons, second only probably to money, for why people tell me that they don't want to get into the hobby. It's just it's too complex. It's too hard. I've tried to look into it and I read into it for a couple of months and there was all these things that you had to test for and all of this stuff and that was just that keeps people away. So if
Yeah.
reefability has the ability to simplify that for people, it may well help more people get into and enjoy the hobby for sure. So
Did you
that
happen to see
alone is
the
exciting.
Did you happen to see the Worldwide Corals video of my simple system?
I haven't had a chance to look at it
Okay.
yet. No, you
So
sent
I
me the
have a
link, but I haven't been able to look at it just yet.
Yeah, so for those who are maybe listening to this,
Hmm.
I explain a very simple system that only requires me to test three parameters. It's nitrate and phosphate and salinity, and that's it. And the way it can be so simple is because I just have soft corals in it, so I don't
Hmm.
have to worry about alkalinity or calcium or magnesium. So, you know, that tanks like that can make things really simple. Now, it's still challenging to start a tank like that from scratch, right?
Hmm.
But when I tell people who ask me for a simple system, if you start out a system like that with live sand, some quantity of live sand and some quantity of reef rubble to go with your dry rock, it's gonna there's gonna be some uglies for a few months, but after that, it's gonna be pretty easy.
Hmm.
So it doesn't
And
have to be that hard.
when you say live sand, you're talking about from the ocean, not live sand in a
Yeah.
bag.
So right. So for example, there's a product I won't say the name, but there's a product that comes in a big bag of sand. That is not live sand. That's not what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
I'm talking about there's Tampa Bay Live Rock. There is Keys. Oh, I can't remember the names of there's an outfit that collects live sand in the Keys,
Hmm.
and there's another business that collects live sand in the Gulf of Mexico, and they go out and they collect it in deep water, so it's far away from the shore. They collect it and then they ship it out over the next week after they collect it, and they keep it just like they keep live animals. They keep it in a system to keep everything alive,
Right.
and that stuff is like magic when it
Hmm.
comes to starting up a new system. There's another company called Aqua Biomics
Hmm.
who sells tests to characterize the microbiome. And he actually gets live sand and live reef rubble, and then he tests it so he can tell you how many different bacteria are in the live sand or the live reef rubble, and also tests it for parasites and pathogens. So one of the risks of getting some live sand from the ocean is that it could come with Uronema or some other fish parasite, something like that. But
Right.
he tests it first and makes sure that it doesn't have any of that stuff. Then you can buy it from him at Aquabiomics. Problem
Doesn't
with
he?
that is that he sells out of it so fast that it can be hard to find
Yeah.
it in
Well,
stock.
I mean, that stuff is like that's the holy grail of sands,
Yep,
but doesn't he include the analysis report with the
he does.
sand
Yeah,
that you buy?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So I
great.
recently I got some from him that had 900 different variants of bacteria. So just to compare that to, you asked me about, we were talking about bottles of bacteria.
Hmm.
So in the bottle of bacteria, there might be two,
Hmm.
right? Versus 900.
Right.
So
There's
if
no
you're looking for a
contest.
way, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a way to get a tank started, and if you want a high probability route to success, right? We talked about different roots of success. Like you can be successful with a low biodiversity, just add a little bit of bacteria from a bottle, dry rock. You can be successful that way, but it's much less likely than going the way of adding some live sand with 900 variants of bacteria.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's just a lot, it's just a lot easier way to go. You won't have to wait so long to start enjoying your tank.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually going to be my next purchase for my 210. I got the Tampa Bay Rock in the other day, but with everything in my life that you may not know about with work comp and all that stuff, money and everything is
Yeah,
obviously important. So,
yeah,
being able to ship that stuff in, shipping isn't getting any cheaper. The few little
no,
products that I sell, shipping is expensive. So,
yeah, it sure is.
but you spoke about using Reefability to ID certain pests and things like that.
Right.
That was one of the things that Tia hit on that something like ChatGPT might have a very difficult time with. And so what did you do to make sure that it wasn't going to give some sort of an off the wall answer? Is there just a
Well, it's pulling
probability
from,
for it?
I mean, so Tia might be thinking of Chat GPT identifying that you've got like who knows what that couldn't occur in your reef tank, right?
Hmm.
Whereas because this is pulling from vetted sources, it's only pulling from things that you're likely to find in a reef tank, right?
So even the image identification has all
Yeah,
been vetted sources and
yeah,
stuff.
it's all vetted. Yeah.
That's
It,
awesome.
the limiting thing though is that the real challenge though is getting good enough images. And so
Hmm.
we have a combination of the image and then some text of description. And
Okay.
together, those tend to make it more likely to be a good ID.
Okay.
But just the photo, because of like this, the heavy blue light makes things
Hmm.
challenging from reef
Yeah,
tank.
that's a thing we always see is in my group and all the other ones too. Somebody posts a picture of something, and the first three comments are like, "Can you turn the white lights on, please?"
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
it
Well,
is
even with the
difficult.
light, even with the white lights, it's usually not enough. Like even if
Hmm.
I have my lights set to be really white, just that
Hmm.
that blue still just really comes through. So I
Yeah,
always take pictures with a amber filter on my phone.
I do too. It literally just sits next to my tank. It
Yeah,
never leaves its little home there
yeah.
by the tank. So what what is something, the last question that I have here, one of the close to the last ones, is what's something that this can provide that traditional resources like books and other experts, can't really do? And obviously the speed of using it is one of those things. But is there anything else that you can see that would be a benefit that those other, traditional media sources might not be able to help with?
Well, I certainly don't want to discourage people from reading, um, you know, I guess what people would call legacy media, like books and
Hmm.
Coral Magazine is a great resource.
Hmm.
Um, Books, however, I mean, books are becoming more and more rare because of all the other sources of information that are out there. So
Yeah.
some of the best reef keeping books maybe came out in 2001, right? And so they're static.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of new stuff that's come out since then, right? So, you know, that's the big advantage of using a data source that's keeping up with new information
Hmm.
as opposed to books. And then also, the speed at which you can get answers to questions in terms of forums, besides the fact that Reefer AI is not going to insult you. You can actually be really mean to
Yeah.
Reefer AI, and Reefer AI is very, very pleasant back. Um,
Yeah. I'm hoping that that's
um,
what I'm building in my community, and it's because
but
it's
also, you're not going
yeah,
to get, five different contradictory answers.
right.
Um, so you're going to have, and the Reefer AI is also going to know the parameters of your tank. And so,
Hmm.
um, like I said before, I don't think it replaces talking to people on forums, talking to other hobbyists. Talking to other human reef keepers is never going to be something that I would discourage. But what I think it does is it helps the hobbyist ask smarter, more informed questions
Hmm.
because it's easier to get more information about the topic, and things in your tank that may be relevant to that question by using the tool.
That's great. I already want to download it like right now. I want to get in there and start playing with it this afternoon. One of the things you mentioned earlier about using the uploading the ICP analysis, and you said that's one of the more popular things that people do with it. That's what one of my friends who was telling me about it. That's what he was doing with it. He's
Yeah.
uploading his ICP analysis, and he even told me he was like, "Man, I use this thing for about a month, and the colors on everything that I have are just going nuts because he
Oh,
had some
great. He's using
deficiencies."
Captivate.
Yeah, I think he's using moonshiners. But he's
Well,
using
if
it
he's
in a
using moonshiners, then we don't have a moonshiners tool yet, although we may incorporate that in the future. We just have
it may be
Captivate for now.
Captivate then,
Yeah,
yeah, because I know he was using both. He was uploading the ICP and it was telling him what to do, so it had to be
got it.
Captivate.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but yeah, he was obviously deficient in a few things, and Reefability made the suggestions, and this is what to do, and he made those changes, and he's like, dude, I can see the difference in my tank from making those changes, so that's very exciting.
Yeah,
And
one thing I didn't mention is that it analyzes different kinds of data, right? So ICP is what you're talking about. And
mhm,
so you can upload an ICP. We're currently working on expanding that so you can see histories of ICPs. So it keeps all your old ICPs and you can look for trends and stuff. That isn't quite there yet. That took a little bit more complexity of working on the back end.
mhm,
But you can upload ICPs now and it'll give you an instant analysis of your parameters and then how you can correct them with trace element dosing. It also, you can upload an NDOC test where you can look at dissolved organic carbon in your system. Triton makes that test, so you can get information about that. You can upload a microbiome test. So I said aquabiomics
mhm,
measures microbiomes. It will, the Reefability will help you interpret your microbiome test if you do one of those.
mhm.
Also, eDNA test that Aquabiomics does. It'll help you interpret those for mostly for fish parasites and things like that. And so it helps analyze a bunch of different kinds of data.
And I think that's the beauty of the whole thing is it can do that so fast. If a person were to take one of those aquabiomics tests and go one by one, and start looking at each one of those bacteria to try to see what they were, if they didn't know, if they were not a microbiologist and they had to go find that
Yeah, the
information,
the
that's
output people say is a little bit intimidating if you're not familiar, with
yeah.
that area. So
And the
this
fact that
is
it
why
just
we,
takes all of that and just,
yep,
it serves it to you.
simplifies
Here,
it.
here's the answer for you, about what all this means.
Yep,
That is
yep,
so good and so great. So, one more question here, and I'll let you go. I don't want to take up too much of your time
sure.
today. Where do you see this going in the future? And what I mean is the AI in relationship to the advancement of the hobby. Like, what's coming down the pipe, in your opinion, that's going to be helpful to everybody?
Well, I think that AI, like we're using it, is probably going to be incorporated across a lot of different things. Connecting your lights, connecting your skimmer, all sorts of different things in your tank.
Hmm.
Having an AI analysis of what you could potentially do. I think it's going to be incorporated into most apps,
Hmm.
not just for aquarium keeping, but for everything. It's such a versatile tool that will do data interpretation and make recommendations. And so I think it's going to become more and more common. It's going to get better and better, and it's going to be a tool especially useful, I think, for new reef keepers.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it reminds me when I hear some of the pushback on AI.
Hmm.
It reminds me of the 90s when I had all kinds of friends that swore they were never going to use email because it's just email is, I hate email. It's just I'm
Yeah.
never going to get sucked into using email. And now in 2025, can you imagine any business or educational system or
Hmm.
science system working without electronic communication? I mean, in
Yeah.
banking and everything, it's so important for everything that we do. But back in the 90s, it seemed like a time sink and not something that was necessarily going to be so useful, and you could maybe opt out of it. I think that AI eventually, is going to get better. Just like email got better. It used to be clunky, and now it's, you can get messages instantly from our phones, right?
Right.
Um, so I think like that, it's just going to become,
Yeah.
something that we don't even think about it because we use it so much.
Well, and it's already being baked into the back end of everything that we use. I mean, the first thing that pops up on Google now is an AI generated result. I mean, which they
Right.
still allow us to turn it off, but
which
you know,
is which is can be problematic. I mean, for a while, Google Gemini was telling people that there were freshwater dolphins in Lake Erie because of some
I hadn't
some
heard that.
April Fool's prank that Gemini was pulling from. So,
Mm,
you know, as we're still not there yet when it comes to using AI in search engines.
hmm
So, I mean, that's like when somebody sees that, they're like, why would I want to ask AI questions about my reef tank? I don't want
Right.
to get bad information. So that's
hmm
absolutely what we had in mind. How can we avoid those kind of pitfalls when we design the app?
Yeah. Well, and the fact that you did and you limited it through those exclusionary data sets and things to the vetted information that you all know to be good, that makes all the difference in the world, you know. So, well, we're coming down to the second time the program here has told me that I should pay
All
for
right.
additional time. So I guess we'll wind it up there. So if you want to tell people, I mean, it's in the app stores, the Apple and the Google Play stores. They can just type Reefability and find it.
Yeah, they can just type Reefability into the Google Play Store or yeah, the iPhone store.
hmm
And I don't want to give people the impression that the app is perfect. It certainly is something that um, we are learning more about every day, and we get a lot of user feedback to help us build new tools in and to fix things that maybe go wrong. Um, Several of the most popular tools in the app right now were suggested by users. So, you know, Logan, please, download the app, start using it, and let me
I'm gonna
know.
get
Is
it
there
this
something
afternoon. Yeah.
is there something that you think could be improved or done differently? We really appreciate when people give us feedback because
Yeah, definitely.
there's just a few of us putting our heads
hmm
together to come up with what we think is the most useful thing for reef keepers. And I
Right.
especially appreciate your perspective from running this Reef Rookies group
hmm
because I sort of feel like when I designed the app, I sort of felt like, man, if I could have had this when I was a beginning reef keeper, this
Right.
would have been great. Like I really feel like it can be a important tool for newer hobbyists. And so
Yeah.
any suggestions you have to make that more the case, I would really appreciate it.
Right, right on. Well, you and I have connected now, so we know how to get in contact with each other. I'm going to use the app for a while and get a feel for it and all of that. I will probably end up making some sort of a video about it. I'm sure, letting everybody know about it more than what you and I are talking about here today. So that's probably coming in the future as
Great.
well, because from what I've heard from everybody else, it is as nice as it sounds. So
I'm glad that we're starting to get some word of mouth out there.
yeah, that's happening
I
for
think
sure.
that it's taken a while,
hmm
for people to hear about it. We haven't really put a lot of advertising in it. I've been interviewed on a few podcasts and things, and
hmm
word's starting to get out. But I think most reef keepers still probably haven't heard of it. So
Yeah.
anything
Well,
I can do to, or anybody else can do to get the word out, I very much appreciate.
very cool. Well, I will certainly try to help with that. And like I said in the beginning, my intent was not to do a video on the Reefability app and more the use of AI in reef keeping. But since we were here, might as well roll it all in together. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully you and I may have some more future conversations. You know, who knows what could happen.
Sounds good. I enjoyed talking to you, Logan.
All right. Thanks. Likewise, I enjoyed it as well. Appreciate it.
So there you have it. We're at the end. There was a couple of different viewpoints there for you to take some information away from and help you decide what's going to be the best way for you moving forward. As for me and my opinion and what I think about AI in the use of reef keeping, here it is. I think there's a place for it, and something like the Reefability app is that place.
They have designed their AI with those exclusionary data sets. Sorry, a four-wheeler went by the house. They've designed their AI using those exclusionary data sets and that vetted information to make sure that any answer you get from their system is very plausibly true. On the other hand, using something like Gemini or ChatGPT as a sole thing to help you control your aquarium is probably not a good idea. We have seen several examples in this podcast and talking to Tia, the one where the picture and it told you that it was a snake, but it was actually a stick. That can happen with anything. I have personally tried to use ChatGPT to identify a few different things in my tank, and it just isn't very good at it. It was telling me that munid isopods were actually like terrestrial roly-poly bugs, the kinds that are on the land and under the rocks. And obviously, this is not the case. So I think there's a place for AI in reef keeping. And I think that you also need to be very, very careful about how you use it. Thanks for watching.